We'll bring you an update on the injuries suffered by Bukayo Saka and Martin Odegaard. We're going to discuss Jakub Kiwior's future, and we're going to react to that very emotional Eberechi Eze interview with Ian Wright. All of that and loads more to come on today's episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner. Let's get into it. Hey, everybody. How are we doing? Welcome back to the pod. Good to see you all. How are we doing? Feeling pretty good. It was a good weekend for the Arsenal, wasn't it? In a lot of ways, you know, we got the Eze signing over the line. We had that amazing moment at Emirates Stadium where he was unveiled. Of course, it was just a brilliant day, wasn't it? All round, and we won 5-0. We won 5-0. Victor Gyökeres opened his Arsenal account. We kept another clean sheet. The only downside, the only kind of negative was, of course, the injuries sustained by Bukayo Saka and Martin Odegaard. But we've got a bit of an update on those that we can bring you on today's pod. And let me just say this for now. It's not as bad as first feared. And I do think that there's a part of us that was kind of, you know, reliving the sort of traumas of last season when we saw those two players go off, because not only did we have an unbelievable volume of injuries last season, they were also severe. And I've said my bit on it before, so I don't want to ramble on about it. I've said in the past that, you know, for me, I think we could have managed those players a little bit better. I'm not saying that would have completely changed things or that it would have completely taken away all the risk, but it certainly would have minimized it. It certainly would have reduced it. So, yeah, let's see how this is going to pan out. But hopefully it's not as bad as first feared. Let me say a few hellos to those of you joining us in the live chat. Good to see so many of you with us. We are going to be bringing you a kind of like Premier League review type feature after every weekend. But we're going to leave it till tomorrow's episode, till Tuesday's episode, just because obviously there is a big game coming up tonight, Monday night. You've got Newcastle against Liverpool, which I think is, you know, probably the biggest game of the weekend, the best game of the weekend, the game with the most kind of narrative around it and the most riding on it. Obviously, you've got the whole Alexander Isak situation. Will he make a move to Liverpool in the final week of the window, or will he stay put? You know, and there's become a little bit of a rivalry that's developed between the two sets of supporters. I guess it was already there, but it seems to have just intensified a little bit in recent times, given sort of some of the back and forth around a potential move for Alexander Isak. So, yeah, that's going to be a fascinating game, and we'll cover that one off as well on the next episode that we bring you. Good morning to Jane. AJ T Down Under is with us as well, who says he was touched by the Eze interview. We'll get onto that in a bit, because I'm sure most Arsenal fans that watched that were. We've got Alex, we've got Joachim, who says, yeah, it was very powerful just on the interview again. It made me very happy for him to be back at the Arsenal. James Nichols is with us. Dylan Brooks. Alawi is celebrating his birthday. Happy birthday, mate. All the best to you. Have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. What else have we got? Android Mafia said that that Gyökeres was going to get a couple of goals at the weekend. He's calling himself Mystic Mafia because his screen name is Android Mafia. Love that. Lots and lots of you with us today, which is great to see. Thank you all so much. If I could just ask, if you haven't done so already, please do leave a like on the video. If you're a regular here, you know what you're going to get. And subscribe to the channel if you are new. Okay, let's start off with some transfer news with regards to a potential exit. Now, according to Fabrizio Romano, Porto are pushing hard for Jakub Kiwior, and a new bid is expected to come in this week. Now, Arsenal rejected an offer from Porto for Jakub Kiwior back in July, as far as we're aware. Now, Porto want to take the player on an initial loan with an obligation to buy. So what it sounds like is that Porto are happy to buy Jakub Kiwior. They believe that he'd be a good fit, and they think that signing him is absolutely worthwhile. However, it sounds like for financial reasons, they kind of just want to kick the can down the road a little bit. And, you know, I don't know the intricacies and the ins and outs of Porto's financial status, but it sounds like what they'd like to do is get this deal done now, but of course pay for it later down the line. And I suppose from Arsenal's perspective, it's not the end of the world. Like, as long as you get the obligation to buy in there rather than it being an option, then I think it is a sale, isn't it? Essentially, it's just with a slightly later execution date. And as long as there's no break clauses in that sort of obligation to buy clause, then there's no problems and there's no worries. And I think, if you're Arsenal, you should be able to use that, the fact that Porto want to pay a little bit later down the line, to your advantage in the negotiations. And you should be able to, in my opinion, push for a greater fee as a result of that. However, when you listen to what it's said that Porto are offering, which is around about 24, 25 million euros, apparently, I feel like we'd be being shortchanged there. I mean, I think we paid about 20 odd million pounds for Jakub Kiwior. And yes, at the beginning, he struggled to establish himself in the team. He had a run at left back, which was okay, but not amazing. But last season, I thought, was when he really kind of came into his own. And I think that's when the rest of Europe and people outside of Arsenal circles probably started to take notice of Jakub Kiwior. And that's probably what's generated the interest in him this summer. He came into the side to replace Gabriel at a real crucial point, and he was really, really solid in our run to the Champions League semi-final. And for that, he deserves a lot of praise and a lot of credit. I don't really want to lose Jakub Kiwior. I don't. I think that he stepped up last season, and I think he showed everybody that he's as good a squad player as you could have, really. Of course, at his age, there's probably a want and even a desperation to go somewhere where you're going to play week in, week out. But I always say this, like, do you want to go and be a kind of big fish in a smaller pond, or would you rather be a smaller fish in a bigger pond, but with the opportunity to achieve amazing things? It depends how you view football. Do you view it as a team game? And would you view any achievements of the teams as yours as well? Or do you look at it from a purely individual standpoint, which would mean that, yeah, Jakub Kiwior, he's not playing enough. I understand it. I get it. What I am surprised by, though, is how open and willing Arsenal seem to be to let Jakub Kiwior go if the price is right. Because if you're talking 40, 45 million euros, when you consider what we've paid for him and the bit part that he's played at Arsenal, generally speaking, I'd go, it's a no-brainer. You take the money and you move on. But it doesn't feel like we'd be making, much more than what we paid for him, despite in the second half of last season, his stock really, really rising. So the only thing I can think of here is that Jakub Kiwior has expressed a desire to leave, has expressed a desire to move on. He was in the squad at the weekend, but he wasn't in the squad on the opening weekend against Manchester United. And there is a feeling, just based on what we're reading and what we're hearing, that Mosquera has kind of leapfrogged him in the Arsenal sort of defensive hierarchy, if you like. But if we lose Kiwior, and we might still lose Zinchenko as well, does that mean that Arsenal go back into the market for another defender? I think we'd have to. And then you're asking for the club to go out and bring in 8 players in a summer, which, I thought 6 was unprecedented. I thought 7 was even more wild. But to make it 8 would just be incredible. I know it's relative to the departures that you have. And if you got, I don't know, 25 million euros guaranteed for Jakub Kiwior, albeit 12 months down the line, you would feel comfortable and confident, wouldn't you, in going and spending that money to bring in a replacement. There's a lot of talk about Nkapie of Bayer Leverkusen as a potential alternative left-sided centre-back. Can probably tuck in at left-back as well if you needed him to. Not that I think we're particularly concerned about the left-back position, but he does give you that flexibility. But again, you're talking about a player with a 50 million euro, 60 million euro release clause. So you'd be making a significantly bigger investment than what you'd be bringing in for Jakub Kiwior. So can I see Arsenal doing that? I'm not sure. Fabrizio Romano does say that if Zinny and Kiwior both leave, Arsenal could add one more player. So there is some legs to that. It's not just me sort of adding one and one together and coming up with 3. It feels like there is really some expectation in the kind of transfer world that if Arsenal were to let those 2 players, they would move for another one. Who that would be, I don't know. I mentioned Nkapie's name because I've seen that pop up in a couple of places this morning. But yeah, my thoughts are generally I don't really want to lose Jakub Kiwior. I don't really understand how Mosquera has jumped in front of him. I think Mosquera is brilliant, but Mosquera's cover for the right side more than the left side. So right centre back and right back. Kiwior feels like left centre back, left back, and so they don't really, I don't think, compete with each other too much in that sense. But obviously, Mosquera's come in and impressed. Arsenal were really, really convinced by him. That's why they went out and got him. And I don't doubt for a second, by the way, that Christian Mosquera is a good player. And I don't doubt for a second that Christian Mosquera has the potential to go much further than Jakub Kiwior does. But I just think in a summer where we've talked loads about adding depth and adding lots more strength to the group, I just don't understand really why we would let Jakub Kiwior go for what I believe to be less than his market value, unless, and I think this is probably the key, he's expressed the desire to move on. I don't think Arteta would want to keep a player who doesn't want to be at Arsenal. And it's not like there's been some major falling out, and it's not that I have any resentment or anything towards Jakub Kiwior, because I don't. Genuinely, I don't. I get it. I understand his perspective, and I understand why he would want to move on. But I don't get the sense that Arsenal would kind of keep him against his wishes. And I think if they saw a deal that allowed them to kind of make good on their investment that they made initially, which is what this will be doing, because they'd certainly be making the money back that they spent on Jakub Kiwior after having 2-3 seasons of good use out of him as backup and all the rest of it, then fine. They might see that as a bit of business that they have to do. He is one of our more sellable assets because, as I say, he stopped Rose. And, you know, that's brilliant for us as the potentially selling club. But I did think it rose more than what this offer from Porto reflects. The problem is that it totally depends on where that interest comes from, right? If the interest comes from Real Madrid or Barcelona, for example, you can demand big money. If the interest comes from a fellow Premier League club, you can demand big money. When the interest comes from Portugal, with all due respect, you are not going to get the same amount of money, and you're not going to get as lucrative an offer. So you kind of got to understand it as well. Again, my feelings are clear. I'd rather we keep him. I'd rather we hold on to the depth. I'd rather we hold on to that kind of piece of our defensive puzzle. That's where I'm at. But of course, we're going to have to wait and see what happens over the coming days on that one. Jakub Kiwior could be leaving. Right, let's take a short pause. And when we come back, we're going to react to that Ian Wright / Eberechi Eze interview. Why am I saying slash? Like, I think what the kids do on social media now is they would have put Eberechi Eze X Ian Wright. I think that's the way that they like to do it. But anyway, we're going to cover that off in just a minute because I think we have to. I think it was really emotional. It was a bit of a tearjerker, wasn't it? It kind of got people really, really excited for the Eberechi Eze signing and all the rest of it. So we'll cover that off in just a minute. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe.
That's right. Like and subscribe. Before we dive into the Eberechi Eze stuff, though, I just want to remind you guys that if you want to become a patron, you can do so by visiting patreon.com/the Chronicles of a Gooner. As I mentioned, we're going to be bringing you video analysis of every single Premier League game. We'll be picking out a 15-20 minute segment that we thought taught us something, showed us something from each of those games, and we're going to watch it in each other's company and run you through some thoughts and some observations. We put out the second episode of that yesterday, where I looked at the first 15-20 minutes of the second half against Leeds United. During that period of time, we got 2 Arsenal goals. One of them was Victor Gyökeres, and we saw the Bukayo Saka injury, and we had a good look at that to try and make sense of what exactly had happened and how serious the whole thing looked. We've got a bit of an update on that today, but you can get my reaction to those pictures over on patreon.com/the Chronicles of a Gooner. Thank you to everyone who signed up over the past few days. Go over and check it out. Right. What I want to do now is I just want to touch on the Eberechi Eze and Ian Wright emotional interview. And the reason I want to do this is because I really felt an emotion in the stadium on Saturday. The kind of emotion that you don't normally get when you make a new signing. Okay, if we're being completely and brutally honest, you don't normally get this level of reaction. You just don't. Okay, so I wanted to share this with you guys because this was me on BBC Radio London as this whole event unfolded because I had no time to prep. No, there was no planning. I was told, look, we are going to we're going to cross to you when Eberechi Eze walks out on the pitch, and I had to do it off the cuff, but I felt really kind of emotional because I could see the emotion on Eberechi Eze's face, and I think this is really really interesting. So have a listen to this for me, will you? Let me just share the screen. I should have done that before I teed it up. But anyway, hold on. Where are we? There we go. Chrome tab window. That's the one we want. Okay, let's do it. Have a listen to this. Oh, you guys can't hear. Thanks for letting me know nice and early. Thanks for letting me know. I'm sitting there playing this thing and you guys can't even hear it. Hold on a second. For God's sake. I wanted you guys that weren't at the stadium to understand the emotion that was coming through at Emirates Stadium. Hold on a second. One sec. Let me unmute that. I think that's what will do it. Okay. I think this is going to do it now. Sorry. Hold on. Let's try again. If it doesn't work this time, I'll have to bail. Have a listen. Nope, still not working. Okay, forget about it. That was me sort of emotionally reacting to Eberechi Eze coming out onto the pitch because I wanted you guys that weren't at the game to kind of get a sense of how it all kind of went down. But for whatever reason, I don't know why it's not working. Maybe I could share it through my microphone, but I'm not going to try for a third time and mess it up. Anajit says hardly audible. JMD says I could hear fine. I don't know. Anyway, let's talk about the interview itself because it was a really, really emotional interview. You just really got that kind of sense from Eberechi Eze that he was so chuffed to be back at the club. Really, really excited by the prospect and maybe a little bit overwhelmed as well by the emotion. I think that certainly came across to me. Here's a guy who, left Arsenal at a very young age, who clearly had to deal with rejection along the way and, has been on a really, really good journey, but it's not been the most glamorous journey in terms of the clubs that he's played for. I think he spent some time at Fulham, Queen's Park Rangers, then got his move to Crystal Palace, and it took him a few years to kind of really establish himself as the player we all know he can be and break into the England squad, etc., etc. But now he's at Arsenal. And as he walked out onto the pitch wearing that number 10 shirt, I can't remember ever, feel like the last time I felt that kind of outpouring of emotion from the fans was when Arsene Wenger said goodbye. And I know that not everybody was, on board with Wenger at the back end of his Arsenal tenure, but we all kind of just stopped for a minute and went, you know what? Forget about what people think of your decisions in recent years. Forget about the transfer business. Forget about some of the frustrations that we felt with you at the helm. We just all paused and went, this man is a legend of this football club, and we have got to give him the send-off and the respect that he deserves. So the last time I could feel that kind of respect and emotion coming across from the crowd to the players, or any player that wasn't in an in-game situation, it was probably Wenger's goodbye. Now, I'm not comparing Eberechi Eze and Arsene Wenger in terms of what they've done for Arsenal and their status at the football club and all the rest of it. Eberechi Eze's got it all to do. But my point here is that this was a special moment. It was a really, really special moment. And I just thought, to be there, to experience it, to witness it, and to have the absolute honor, by the way, of covering it was just amazing. Do you know what? I'm going to play it through my phone so that you guys can hear on the microphone, because I think it is worth listening to, because you can hear from the crowd what a moment it was. So have a listen here.
Let's go back to the Emirates, Harry. Someone's appeared in the tunnel.
He's appeared. Eberechi Eze has walked out onto the Emirates Stadium pitch wearing the famous number 10 shirt. He's got the number on his back. He's turned around. He's getting applause from every single corner of this stadium. It's an incredible reception, and he's making his way out towards the centre circle. Everybody's on their feet. The roar was incredible when he emerged, when he appeared. And remember, Mikel Arteta's taken the canopy away from the tunnel, so people got a glimpse of him nice and early as he made his way out onto the pitch. He's waving to the adoring fans. He's saying his thank yous to this club, this great club that's brought him back. Because remember, his journey started here. He didn't make the grade. He's been away. He's been rejected on numerous occasions, but he's had that resilience to bounce back. He's become a star at Crystal Palace, won them the FA Cup, and here he is finally back at Arsenal. He's got his dream move, and the Gunners fans here can't wait to see him in action. Hopefully, it will be up at Anfield next week, Phil.
And it might need to be up at Anfield next week, because we've got injuries to some key players who will probably be missing. So yeah, I was really feeling it in that moment, but I think the player was, and I think when you watch the Eze interview with Ian Wright, you then understand, because that interview would have happened, I'd imagine, before the sort of walkout onto the pitch. I think Arsenal were working really, really hard to try and get everything done and in time for that. But if you watch that, then you can connect it to how the kind of feeling was inside the stadium, and how Eberechi was obviously feeling at the time as well, and that did come across. Like, you could see from a distance. Like, sometimes you get a player, they just signed for a new club, get paraded before the fans, before a home game. They come out, they give it the old clap over the head, look around, give it a bit of this, and that's it. They wave, and then they walk inside, and nothing. But you could really tell that Eberechi Eze was very like, I'm going to take this in, and I'm going to make the most of this moment. But anyway, go over and check that interview out on Arsenal.com. and the Arsenal YouTube channel if you haven't done so already. Right, really short pause, and we're going to finish off with the latest on those injuries. Saka and Odegaard both went off against Leeds United, but are their injuries as bad as first feared? We'll get into that next. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the show. Okay, so we've had some updates. There were some reports that came out late last night or yesterday's finish time. Pardon. I don't know why all the technical stuff's going wrong today, but it is. Anyway, I think we're good now. So, yeah, look, there was some reports that came out yesterday with regards to the two players and the injuries that they suffered, but it did seem like positive news and sound like positive news. Arsenal receive an injury boost, according to The Athletic, after scans suggest neither Bukayo Saka nor Martin Odegaard have suffered long-term injuries. And this is great news. Sammy Mockbell's come out today and said that Saka's going to be out for about 4 weeks and that the Martin Odegaard injury is not serious. Look, I expect both of them to miss the game at the weekend. I don't think Odegaard will make it either, just based on my prediction right now. Maybe Eze comes in and plays in the 10 role, and maybe Madueke plays on the right-hand side, and we go like that. Maybe Martinelli comes in on the left, which I think Mikel would have probably done anyway at a place like Anfield, because as we've talked about many times before, he really, really kind of values his ability to contribute defensively and to stretch teams. So I think, yeah, we're gonna see how Mikel Arteta kind of navigates this over the next week or so. But I think, again, as I mentioned at the top of the pod, there's probably a bit of PTSD from what happened last season. And yes, we've had a high volume of injuries at the start of this season. I mean, we're without Saka now, Odegaard, Havertz, White, and Norgard as it stands. But I think the severity of the injuries is what really messed us up last season. It wasn't that we missed Bukayo Saka for 3 or 4 weeks. It was that we missed him for multiple months. It wasn't that we missed Havertz for 3 or 4 games. It was because we missed him for months. And that was the ongoing theme of last season. So when you see a player pull up with an injury, and particularly with Bukayo Saka, like the Odegaard one, I got to say, and I think this probably came across in the main pod that we did yesterday, I wasn't as concerned. Like, he got up, he continued, he obviously realized that he couldn't afterwards and then went off. But I was never as worried about that one as I was with the Saka one. When I saw Saka, sort of holding his head and doing all that stuff, it did worry me. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see how long they're going to be out for. But as I say, don't allow the PTSD of last season to kind of get you going down a real path of worry at this stage, because it looks like Odegaard might even be back by the weekend. Saka 3-4 weeks. He's going to miss the Liverpool game. Will he miss the Man City game? Probably. But there's an international break in there as well. So that kind of works in our favor a little bit in terms of, that time he's out is going to be spent when he would be playing for England rather than Arsenal. And I'm absolutely fine with that. But yeah, let's see how this goes. Positive news, positive updates. That's what we wanted. It's not great. It's not ideal. And it is frustrating to be without this many players at the start of the season. But hey, it is what it is. And just as we're about to wrap up the show, how about this? Exclusive. Arsenal working to sign Piero Hincapié from Bayer Leverkusen, subject to players' exits. The 23-year-old defender told Bayer Leverkusen of his wish to leave and prioritizing Arsenal above others' efforts ongoing to make fee more realistic than the 60 million euro clause. Wow. So that's just dropped now. That's literally just dropped now. I think what we're going to do is we're going to wrap up anyway, because we were going to wrap up. And then we'll bring you a bonus bit very, very shortly, looking at this once I've had a bit of time to break it down and to understand exactly what the situation and what the deal is. But Ornstein bomber, what is going on? Arsenal going crazy in the transfer window this summer. We're going to leave this there and we'll be back with a short video very, very soon looking at that. So I'll catch you all in a bit. Goodbye.